It's been a minute since I made a Hall of Famer or not video, and I figured now that it's the off season in the NFL, and I also just feel like filling some time, why not make another one? Full disclosure, because it's been a while since the last edition in this series, and because I'm mostly just too lazy to go back and watch the entire videos to see if I already gave my opinion on certain athletes, there might be an athlete or two that I already gave my opinion on, but guess what? You're just going to have to deal with it anyway if I happen to double dip, so to speak. Without further ado, let's begin. DeSean Jackson, one of the forgotten running backs of the 2000s, but was as dominant as anyone in St. Louis. I'm looking at Jackson's stats. He had over 11,000 rushing yards, 69 touchdowns, haha, nice, whatever. Also had over 460 catches, 3,683 yards receiving. Overall had 15,000 yards from scrimmage, made 3 Pro Bowls. He's right on the verge of making the Hall of Fame. I'm going to say no, though, just because of the lack of truly elite seasons. His best season was 2006. He has 2 second-team All-Pro teams, but that's it, really. Although, if Devin Hester's in the Hall of Fame, he should make the Hall of Fame. But my standards are higher. I say no. Tiki Barber, all-time rusher for the Giants, 6,000-yard seasons, over 10,000 rushing yards. Simply put, no, Tiki Barber's not a Hall of Famer, but he's a weird one because he really ended his final 3 seasons, specifically in 2005 when he was first-team All-Pro. It seemed as though he was getting better, and then he retired to go on to have a failed TV career, and then he ended up doing some nefarious things off the field in terms of his marriage. But he had his best seasons were his last couple seasons, and he pulled a Barry Sanders and left. And then, of course, the year after he retires, the Giants go on to win the Super Bowl without him, so he's been forgotten a bit. But he's another Hall of very good running back that falls short of the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. Leslie ONeal, 132.5 career sacks and 6 Pro Bowls. In my opinion, he arguably has a good enough resume to get in, but is just forgotten about because he played for small market teams. Really underrated pass rusher. He was also, for what it's worth, the 1986 Defensive Rookie of the Year. Then he hurt his knee, came back, and still ended up making those 6 Pro Bowls you talked about. Really, I think it's similar to Kevin Green. I don't know how good he was in run support because I'm not going to go back and watch all these games from the 80s and 90s, but if you have 132.5 career sacks, like, you should be in the Hall of Fame. He is officially 14th all-time in sacks and unofficially, since 1960, 20th. So to me, it's like, why is he not in the Hall of Fame? He should be in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion, just off of that many sacks. Khalil Mack. I think Khalil Mack is a guy who he's made 8 Pro Bowls, 3 first-team All-Pros. He was a Hall of Fame All-2010s team. He was Defensive Player of the Year in 2016. If you had asked me this after 2018, I would have said he probably would be a shoo-in. But I don't really know. He has 101.5 career sacks, and he looks to be looking for another team. This is going to be going to his 4th team. I think the Chargers are trying to get rid of him. Overall, I would say that he is another guy. He's just on the edge. He's 33 years old now. If he has he had 17 sacks last season. Now, that was kind of a little bit of a misleading number because a lot of them came in one game. But still, 17 sacks in a season is really, really good. Made the Pro Bowl. If he can have a couple more double-digit sack seasons, then I think you're talking about a Hall of Famer. But as of this moment right now, I say he falls just short. No. Dez Bryant was always a top 5 receiver during his time, put up above average numbers, but never won a ring. Dez Bryant is a clear-cut no. He had 3 elite seasons, which was 2012 to 2014. His career peaked in 2014 when he led the league in touchdown catches with 16. Outside of those 3 years, 2012 to 2014, he never had 1,000 yards in any season. He finished his career with a respectable 75 touchdowns, but he only had 7,500 yards. He won just 2 playoff games. We all remember the did Dez catch it play against Green Bay in 2014, but then he had a bunch of injuries and was never really the same afterwards. But for those 3 years, 2012 to 2014, he did look like a Hall of Fame caliber player, but to me, his peak just wasn't big enough. It wasn't long enough. That's what she said, in order to justify him being in the Hall of Fame. But he will be in the Dallas Cowboys Ring of Honor for whatever that's worth. Nothing. Lavonte David. Now, this is a good one because Lavonte David, I think it's interesting. He's made 1 Pro Bowl. He's been named first-team All-Pro once, but they were both in different seasons. In 2013, he was a first-team All-Pro, and in 2015, he was a Pro Bowler. He did win the Super Bowl in 2020, so he's a certified Buccaneers legend. My question is, and I'm going to be honest with you, I haven't gone gone back and looked at all the tape and stuff to know why he hasn't made more Pro Bowls. Maybe he's kind of like another London Fletcher, where the numbers are there, because I'm looking at his numbers: 33 and a half sacks, 12 interceptions, nearly 1,500 tackles. That's basically Hall of Fame caliber shit. Why not more Pro Bowls? What happened? What's preventing him from getting more Pro Bowls? Very similar to London Fletcher, who also had a ring. So I don't know. I think if London Fletcher gets in eventually, I think that will spell good things for Lavonte David. As for me personally, I'm going to say I haven't really watched enough of him, but statistically, yes, he is Hall of Fame worthy. His numbers suggest that he is a Hall of Fame worthy player statistically. By the way, did you know that Tom Brady actually taught him how to play linebacker? What an incredible teammate. Percy Harvin. If you had asked me this question after Percy Harvin's rookie season in 2009, I would have said there's no way this guy is not a Hall of Famer. Unfortunately, he had some personal shit, and after 2012, his career really deteriorated, and he did have that kickoff return touchdown in the Super Bowl versus the Broncos where he won a ring, and he was a really, really talented all-around player on some bad Vikings teams early on outside of his rookie season. But I mean, yeah, he doesn't have the career totals. Talent-wise, he was a Hall of Fame talent, but if you look at his career totals, just doesn't have the stats. But again, if Devin Hester made the Hall of Fame, then I would vote for Percy Harvin over Devin Hester as a Hall of Famer. I think Harvin was a better player. Lane Johnson, I'm going to say, and obviously I'm biased, but Johnson, yes, is a Hall of Famer. 5-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro, has a Super Bowl ring, played in another Super Bowl. He's been second-team All-Pro a couple times as well. He's routinely graded out as one of the best at his position. The only thing that might dock him is that he's not the most durable player. He does seem to miss games every year, and so if you're looking for a bunch of Brett Favrean type of records and stuff, not welfare related, but streaks and consecutive games played streaks, you're not going to find that with Lane Johnson. But hey, if Tony Baselli can make the Hall of Fame with but Tony Baselli played 80 games? Lane Johnson's played over 140. I think Lane Johnson's a Hall of Famer. Everson Walls, one of the best corners of the 80s. His stats are very good today, and he led the league in interceptions 3 times, tied with only Ed Reed. Yeah, he got off to a hell of a start in his career. He led the league with 11 picks his rookie year. If you lead the league in interceptions 3 times, that's a big deal, obviously. But unless you actually do a lot of film study, it kind of leads to the question, well, was he a ball hawk, and was he somebody he got a lot of interceptions but was susceptible to being beat deep? I don't know, because back when Everson Walls played, we don't have the advanced metrics back then, but still, 57 interceptions. He ended up winning a Super Bowl in 1990 with the Giants, where he had 6 interceptions in the regular season, and he also had an interception in the postseason. 4-time Pro Bowl, only 1 first-team All-Pro, though, which is kind of weird considering the amount of picks he had. I'm going to say that he is a Hall of Famer just based off of his production. I don't know why. You would think that considering he played for such big market teams like Dallas and the Giants, he would already be in. I don't know why. But I would say, yes, he deserves to be a Hall of Famer. Eddie George, to me, this is an easy no. And it's interesting. He had over 10,000 yards rushing. He had 68 rushing touchdowns. Wasn't much of a receiver. Wasn't a terrible receiver. That wasn't the strength of his game. My issue with Eddie George was he had a career yards per attempt of 3.6. That's it. He played 9 seasons, and in 9 years, only twice did he have over 4 yards per attempt, which is pretty dismal. Now, I know he was more of a bruiser and kind of wore defenses down, and his battles with Ray Lewis were legendary, but yeah, the stats just aren't there. The efficiency just isn't good enough there for me. Even in his best year in 2000, when he was first-team All-Pro, he still averaged just 3.7 yards per attempt. Former Heisman winner, falls short of the Hall of Fame by my standards. Clay Matthews, 6 Pro Bowls, 2 All-Pros, all-time Packer sacks leader, and Super Bowl champion. Again, Matthews is another guy that really through 2014-ish, over his first 6 seasons, said, hey, this guy might be a Hall of Fame caliber player. He had 61 sacks through 6 years, and he had the aforementioned Super Bowl championship that he played a big role in. He had that huge fumble that he caused on Rashard Mendenhall. He had 3.5 sacks in that title-winning postseason. He had 11 career playoff sacks in 15 games, so he was a great postseason performer, but I just don't know if the volume totals are there. 91.5 career sacks, 6 interceptions. His career ended pretty quickly. From 2015 to 2019, over his last 5 years, he had just 30.5 sacks, so he lost his effectiveness. So I'm going to say he belongs in the Hall of Very Good with his father, who ironically enough had a shitload of longevity, but not the peak seasons that his son had. But neither of them are Hall of Famers, in my opinion. Matthew Slater, special teams legend. No. Nick Mangold. You want to talk about Mangold, just Google him. Look at that beautiful beard he has. That's what a fucking real man looks like. Anyway, Mangold, it's weird. The Jets, for some reason, have been dog shit for pretty much their entire existence, yet the one area they always seem to have is a great center. And Mangold certainly was that. 7-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro. All-Pro, first team All-Pro that is. He was a second team All-Pro. Made a couple conference championship games. He is eligible for the Hall of Fame. I'm looking at the Hall of Fame monitor on Pro Football Reference, and it usually gives you a pretty good snapshot of where somebody lands. I think Mangold, he played 11 seasons. I think he's going to be one of those guys that falls just short. He didn't have a dominant enough peak, and he didn't play long enough either to accumulate more accolades. But I think he's going to be another Hall of very good player. Simeon Rice. My initial reaction was, yes, he should belong. He should be in the Hall of Fame. I looked at 122 career sacks. But it's not just totals, it's how many dominant seasons you had. He had 4 seasons with 14 sacks or more. He was a Defensive Rookie of the Year in 96. He was first team All-Pro in 2002 on that legendary Buccaneers defense. He then also had 2 more second team All-Pro appearances. I don't know how much of a run defender or how great he was as a run defender, but he really does have a lot of similar things to Leslie O'Neal, who earlier in the video I said was a Hall of Famer. And if I said that Leslie O'Neal is a Hall of Famer, I really have a difficult time saying that Simeon Rice shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame. And all for what it's worth, during Tampa's Super Bowl run, he had 4 sacks in the postseason, so he earned his ring. I think he's a Hall of Famer. Doug from the movie Up. Yes. First ballot Hall of Famer. He was a good boy. Kenny Lofton. Baseball is very funny because in a weird way, I feel like it's become so analytical and so war related and all this stuff that sometimes you just you forget, like, is the guy good? Was he good or not, right? Kenny Lofton, I'm looking at his numbers. He has a career WAR of 68.4, which is normally good enough, and that usually represents a Hall of Famer, a lower tier Hall of Famer, but still a Hall of Famer nonetheless. Center fielder, he finished with over 2,400 hits, batting average of basically 300, over 600 stolen bases, and it is interesting, he made 6 All-Star teams, a 4-time Gold Glove winner. That right there to me sounds like he's worthy of being a Hall of Famer, and yet he was on the ballot, I think, 1 time in 2013. He was 1 and done on the ballot. He had 3.2%. Maybe he'll get in someday again on the Veterans Committee. I don't know. I think what hurt him just optically was the fact that he got traded a lot. So that kind of made him maybe look or make people think maybe he's not as good or as valuable. If he's so good and valuable, why was he being traded a lot? Because I'm looking at his career right now. Started out not just traded, but changed teams a lot. He started out in Houston, then he went to Cleveland, then Atlanta for a year, then back to Cleveland, then the White Sox, then to the Giants, then to the Pirates, then to the Cubs, then to the Yankees, then to the Phillies, then to the Dodgers, then to the Rangers, and then finally back again to Cleveland. It's like the guy, I guess when you move around that much, kind of like, is he really Hall of Fame worthy if nobody wants him? Which is weird, but an OPS plus career of 107, that's a little bit low. But I would put Kenny Lofton in the Hall of Fame. Also because he was really, really good on backyard baseball too. DeSean Jackson. Yeah, DeSean Jackson is a Hall of very good receiver. I feel like I maybe have done him before in one of my prior videos. I'm looking at him. He led the league in yards per catch 4 different times, which is not an easy accomplishment. He had just 5 1,000-yard seasons. His best season came in 2013 with Chip Kelly, and then he left under very, very weird circumstances. Finished with over 11,000 yards, 58 touchdowns, which is pretty low. He had 4 rushing touchdowns. He made 3 Pro Bowls, was never a first-team All-Pro. He did win a Super Bowl with the Rams in 2021, although he wasn't actually on the roster when they did it because he had gotten traded earlier that season to the Raiders. So it's weird. Anyway, he'll be known as one of the greatest deep threats. But then again, as I'm saying this, I'm like, he definitely deserves to be in over Devin Hester, and I'm going to keep repeating that because it's still fucking insane to me that Devin Hester's in the Hall of Fame. DeSean Jackson, World War II historian, not in the Hall of Fame to me. Bill Walton, the biggest what if in NBA history, yet still made the 75th anniversary team despite only 2 All-Star games. Yeah, I gotta admit, we all know Bill Walton as the lovable, kind of goofy stoner guy now, announces games. Looking at his career, he basically had 2 seasons, and those were those 2 aforementioned All-Star seasons. But to be fair, in a weird way, it's kind of like Kawhi Leonard, where his career totals are really, really not that much, but when he was healthy, he capitalized on it. So I'm looking at it, this is a guy, he missed, so he won the championship in 1977. He had, with the Trailblazers, had the finals run, finals MVP, and he was a great player when he was healthy. There's no question about that. Then the next season in 78, he plays in only 58 games, but he wins MVP. Then, this is insane, over the next 4 seasons, he played 14 games total. So we talk about Anthony Davis being street clothes, we talk about all the load management today, that's what Bill Walton was doing. And he basically just drifted around in no man's land with the Clippers for a bit, and then he had a second resurgence with the Celtics where he got his his second ring and won Sixth Man of the Year in 1986 on that legendary team. So for a guy who really had only 3 or 4 full years, in those 3 or 4 full years, he had 2 rings, he had a Sixth Man of the Year, had a Finals MVP, had an MVP. So accolades-wise, yes. On a per-game basis, a PER of 20, that's Hall of Fame worthy, but he had just 39 career win shares. Career averages of 13 points, 10.5 rebounds, 3.5 assists. Before the injuries with Portland early in his career, he averaged 17 points, 13.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 2.6 blocks, 51% shooting. So he was a Hall of Famer, but I will say, and I do believe he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame based off of talent, but I will say I don't think there really is any other NBA player who gets as much mileage out of 2 good seasons that Bill Walton does. So he's a little bit overrated, but I do think the talent was there. And everybody who watched him play absolutely swears that he was like the best center ever. Like Jokic, but not as good as Jokic, but like a similar prototype of Jokic. Carl Banks, New York Giants. One of the things I like about doing these videos is that I myself go back and look up and see what these guys accomplished. Looking at Carl Banks, 1 Pro Bowl, 1 First Team All-Pro, which both came in 1987. He won 2 Super Bowls with the Giants. He was the All-80s team, Hall of Fame All-80s team, which is interesting. Finished his career with 3 interceptions, 39.5 sacks, unofficially 860 tackles. Problem with Carl Banks that he was always going to be overshadowed by Lawrence Taylor. I would say that he was a very, very good player and a great player for a few years, but my gut instinct is no, falls just short of the Hall of Fame. And he's also, I think, famous for not being able to get Randall Cunningham to the ground in that awesome clip of Cunningham throwing that touchdown pass. But anyway, so I'm going to say Hall of Very good for Carl Banks, not a Hall of Famer. If the NBA Hall was more akin to the requirements of the NFL Hall of Fame, would Draymond Green be a Hall of Famer? And this is interesting. Everybody seems to be divided about whether or not Draymond Green is a Hall of Famer. I think, let's look at his individual accolades. Forget about team shit. 4-time All-Star. He led the league in steals in 2017. 2-time All-NBA. 8-time All-Defensive. 2017 Defensive Player of the Year. And that's, again, just the individual stuff. That doesn't take into account the fact that he leads the Warriors in assists basically every year. His rebounding, his defense. I would say, I look at Draymond in a similar light as Dennis Rodman, and everyone considers Dennis Rodman an easy Hall of Famer. I think Draymond definitely belongs in the Hall of Fame. I think if the NFL, I think Draymond Green would still be a Hall of Famer even if the NBA Hall of Fame had stricter standards, just because he was an important player on 4 championship teams and he was extremely well-rounded, really at everything besides scoring, which is ironic. But that was again similar to Dennis Rodman. You're an impactful player on 5 championship teams. That's again, it's both of them. If they're your first option, if they are your first option offensively, you're fucked. No question about it. Maybe even if they're your second option offensively, they're fucked. But they just impact winning in ways that go beyond what people are used to. And I look at it, and you look at Draymond Green, his teams for his career are plus 9.2 points better on the court when he's on the court, and they're 9.4 points better in terms of on-off splits. And in the playoffs, that gets even more drastic. In the playoffs for his career, the Warriors are 12.6 points per 100 possessions better with him. Him being slotted in for David Lee to create the small ball was really the biggest reason why the Warriors ended up taking off, in addition with Kerr's motion offense. So I think, yes, Draymond Green would make the Hall of Fame even if the NBA Hall of Fame had much stricter standards. LeGarrette Blount, he was good in Tampa and won 3 Super Bowls with the Patriots and Eagles, but I will admit most were goal line touchdowns. What do you think? The short answer is no. LeGarrette Blount is not a Hall of Famer, but I do think his last name was very, very aptly named for what he did to that Boise State guy in college when he was in Oregon. You look at LeGarrette Blount, he finished his career, yeah, there's no fucking way he makes the Hall of Fame despite his 3 Super Bowls. And yeah, a lot of his touchdowns were, he vultured away from Brady, which I don't mind. 56 career touchdowns. He was, he had a great running back name though. Blunt, like blunt force trauma. Like that's just a great fucking name. Unfortunately, he also took his last name a little too seriously, had some issues with marijuana, but I think he was, he was an okay player. He was nothing special. He just happened to be in the right place at the right time a lot, and that's how he got his rings. Not a Hall of Famer. Maybe not even Hall of Very Good, but just a above average player who had some moments in the sun. He helped my Eagles get a ring though, so he's cool in my book. 11 playoff touchdowns too. That's nothing to sneeze at, although it's based more on opportunity in my opinion than talent. Is Pete Carroll a Hall of Famer? He won a Super Bowl and built one of the most dominant defenses ever seen. Hilarious, because if you had asked this question to somebody before 2012, people would laugh at you. Maybe even before 2010. Pete Carroll's had one of the most interesting coaching careers ever, because at first he was the Jets head coach for 1 year in '94, and they went 6-10, and he was a joke. And then he he replaced Bill Parcells in New England with the Patriots, and his Patriots tenure, while record-wise not terrible, they kept getting worse and worse. He was Patriots head coach for 3 years, and he's like hated in New England because he was fucking terrible in New England, and he was laughed out of New England, and they replaced him with Belichick, and we all know how that went. So then he goes to USC and creates one of the most memorable dynasties ever. He leaves USC when they get sanctioned, right, and they have all the sanctions, very similar to what Harbaugh is doing now. And he goes to Seattle, and everyone's kind of like, yeah, what's this guy doing? First year in Seattle, goes 7-9. They win the playoff game, the famous Beastquake game, and then suddenly in 2012, that's when everything turned around for him and ended up winning the Super Bowl, ended up making another Super Bowl, should have won 2 Super Bowls. But then you look at his, it's crazy to me. And then even after they lost Russell Wilson, everyone's like, oh, now Pete Carroll is going to be exposed. Well, Pete Carroll ended up winning that debate. So, but now overall, I look at his career, 170 wins, a win-loss percentage of 59 for his career, 11 playoff wins. I mean, that's a Hall of Fame worthy caliber coach. I'm not saying that's insane to say if you were around, a decade ago when Pete Carroll first took the job of the Seahawks, but he really had an incredible run in Seattle. Even though when I say incredible run, that's what he should have done on the 1 fucking yard line in Super Bowl 49. Run the ball. But anyway, I would say he's a Hall of Famer just because he also looks like Brandy Love. Maurice Jones-Drew. Again, no, Maurice Jones-Drew was a great player, but he is not a Hall of Famer. He had one really dominant year, which was in 2011 when he had over 1,600 yards, was first team All-Pro. He came into the league, it's weird, he and Fred Taylor had that tandem in Jacksonville. He scored 50 touchdowns, over 50 touchdowns his first 4 seasons in the league. He finished his career with just under 80. He had 79 total touchdowns, 8,000 yards rushing, 68 rushing touchdowns, could also catch it out of the backfield, but he fell off very, very quickly after 2011. And it's also weird because he seems to get fatter and fatter every time I see him on NFL Network. I hope he's doing okay, but no, he's not a Hall of Famer. Dale Murphy. I know that there's, in the whole baseball lexicon, there's this massive debate whether or not Dale Murphy should be in the Hall of Fame because his peak was great and he's known as like one of the nicest guys ever. But after 1987, he completely fell off of a cliff. And I'm looking at the numbers now. Through 1987, at the age of 31, he had an OPS plus of 132. He had made 7 All-Star games. He had 5 Gold Gloves. He was basically 2 MVPs, 4 Silver Sluggers. He was essentially on his way to being an absolute shoo-in for the Hall of Fame. He also had 41.6 WAR, which isn't quite Hall of Fame worthy yet, but again, on his way. He was like having a textbook Hall of Fame career, also extremely durable. And then for some reason, after 87, he just completely forgot, it seemed, how to play. And so a lot of people, it's kind of like, well, he never won anything because the Braves teams were really bad. And he fell off his last 6 years in the majors. He had a OPS plus of 96. And there's really no reason why he fell off. There's no explanation as to why he fell off. So people are going to say, well, he was a nice guy. To me, when I look at it, I would say that he wasn't good enough for long enough to make the Hall of Fame. I think he was right on the verge of it, but if he had a couple more, like 2 or 3 good years, really good years, he might have been. But to me, it's like Don Mattingly. Mattingly at his peak, you could say this is a Hall of Fame worthy guy. But overall, the overall picture, I don't think there was just enough good seasons. Brandon Marshall, I find pretty comparable to Andre Johnson, who is now in the Hall of Fame. Brandon Marshall is a very, very interesting guy and very interesting career because you think about him, oh, Brandon Marshall, yeah, I guess he was okay. And then you look at his numbers and you're like, holy shit. You look at him, 6 Pro Bowls, was first team All-Pro in 2012 with Jay Cutler as his quarterback. He was second team All-Pro in 2015 with Ryan Fitzpatrick as his quarterback. He finished his career with 970 catches, over 12,000 yards, 83 touchdowns. Those are Hall of Fame worthy numbers. Especially, again, I'm going to say it, if Devin Ester's in the fucking Hall of Fame, those are definitely Hall of Fame worthy. He led the league in touchdown catches in 2015. The biggest bugaboo with Brandon Marshall, besides the fact that he comes off as the most disingenuous piece of shit ever in interviews, is that, his team, he never made the playoffs. It's one of those weird things. It's kind of similar to like an Ernie Banks, where it's like, yeah, but this is a great player, and he was a great player. I'm looking at it now, he had 8 1,000-yard seasons. He had 4 seasons with double-digit touchdown catches. He had 6 seasons with over 100 catches, so the guy could fucking play. There's no question about that. It's just ironic that for such a great receiver, he never made the playoffs. Now, I know we normally don't associate or really put much emphasis on team success with receivers, but I feel like that will hold him out of the Hall of Fame. To me, I would say he's a Hall of Famer. I would say he was a Hall of Fame worthy player. When I look at receivers, I look at the whole thing, the big three. Were you impactful with catches? Marshall was. Do you get a lot of yards? Marshall did. Do you catch a decent amount of touchdowns? Marshall did. So for me, Marshall would be a Hall of Fame worthy player, but I do not think he will get in, at least anytime soon. Paul Goldschmidt has a serious case for the Hall of Fame if he puts up 2 or 3 solid seasons to end his career. 7-time All-Star, 5 Silver Sluggers, 4 Gold Gloves, and MVP. Also knocking at the door of 65B WAR. I honestly don't know what that is, which is the average WAR of Hall of Fame first baseman. Hey, there it is. Would love to hear Scooby's thoughts on this. Well, Scooby unfortunately is a dog and is not able to form coherent words, but I mean, you summed it up pretty well. Paul Goldschmidt's weird. Like, he's just obviously a great player, but you know, he's one of those guys, like, if he was walking down the street, you wouldn't even know. I guarantee you, like, 9 out of 10 people, maybe even 19 out of 20 people wouldn't even know who he was. So he somehow managed to put together a Hall of Fame baseball career despite flying under the radar completely. I'll just look at some other stats that you didn't. 61.7 regular WAR. He has a career OPS of 143, which is definitely Hall of Fame worthy. An OPS over 900. Again, all of his numbers are Hall of Fame worthy. Won an MVP. Really, it's the only thing that seems to be missing is postseason success and a championship. And if he gets that, he's 36 years old, so you know, time is ticking. But yes, I would say he's a Hall of Famer. David Wright. Oh, Captain America, how he made all the female Mets fans swoon, which, I mean, I don't know how many attractive Mets fans there are, but anyway, look at David Wright. You know, not that far off in terms of on a per plate appearance, in terms of per season rate from Goldschmidt. He had a career OPS plus of 133, OPS of 867, batting average near 300. Another guy, he was on track to be a Hall of Famer through 2013, through his age 30 season, and then injuries crept up and basically ruined his career. Watching it now, so I don't think David Wright will be in the Hall of Fame, but he's another one of those guys that had the ability, was a Hall of Fame talent, just had some really bad injury luck, and that is going to cost him from making the Hall of Fame. But in a weird way, I'll just say this, in a weird way, I feel like that's what the Hall of Fame should be. It should be difficult to get into the Hall of Fame. So there's a lot of things wrong with baseball, but I think one of the few things that I like about baseball is that they are very strict about who gets in the Hall of Fame. Sometimes they're too strict for their own good, like, come on, get Barry Bonds, Roger Clemens, get those guys in the Hall of Fame. But for the most part, I think I like baseball, how baseball does the Hall of Fame stuff. Hey Barry, love your content, thank you. Do you think Steve McNair deserves Hall of Fame status? I do not. Steve McNair, I would say, is the textbook Hall of very good quarterback. You know, because here's the thing: his numbers would be good enough to make the Hall of Fame if he won championships, but he didn't win championships. So it's like, you look at Troy Aikman. Like, McNair's numbers are better than Aikman's career numbers, but Aikman won 3 Super Bowls. Aikman had 3 unbelievable playoff runs, ended in championships. Steve McNair didn't have very good playoff numbers, and he made 1 Super Bowl, which was the famous, 1-yard game against the Rams in '99. But his other career playoff numbers really weren't that good. He did win co-MVP in 2003 with Peyton, which was an award I don't think he deserved. I just think he was a very, very good quarterback. Had a 3 or 4 year span there in the early 2000s where you could say he was a great quarterback. But I mean, you want to make the Hall of Fame as a quarterback, you either have to have a shitload of rings or you have to have unbelievable stats like a Marino. McNair doesn't have, he falls, in the middle where his stats aren't good enough and he doesn't have the rings. It's similar to Donovan McNabb, Boomer Esiason, other guys like that. He falls in that category. Which of your videos do you think deserves to be in YouTube's Hall of Fame? I don't know if any of my videos deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, but I will say from my own experience, in terms of just making a video, I've never been more proud of myself than I was after I made my Tom Brady is the most overrated player in sports history video. Now, I made that after he left the Patriots and before he went to the Buccaneers and won a Super Bowl. So even still to this day, I get people talking about, oh, this age terrible, you suck, go kill yourself. yourself, blah, 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 blah. But I don't care. Like, a lot of the shit I said, I still stand on a bunch of the things I said in that video. I thought it was well researched. I thought that the stats were legit. And I thought I did a pretty good job of really of laying out my argument for why he was overrated. And that's the video that I'm honestly most proud of. So if I had to pick one, it would be that one. Rudy Gobert, 3 Defensive Player of the Year awards. Big old Rudy. This is fun because nobody thinks about Rudy Gobert as a Hall of Famer, but analytically he's on track to be a Hall of Famer. 21.5 PER, over 100 win shares already, and he's in his early 30s. You know, the thing that would help Rudy, at this point, no. To answer the question, no. Rudy Gobert is not a Hall of Famer right now. But it's kind of a sneaky thing. If he is somehow able to win a championship or two, then the whole narrative, I think, because the whole narrative about Rudy is you can't play him in the playoffs, and that's backed up by the on-off splits. But I really feel like if he is somehow able to play a big part on a championship team, look at like a Tyson Chandler in 2011, something like that, in addition to his advanced stats and his efficiency, I think he could make the Hall of Fame. But I do think it would rely a lot on winning a championship. But as of right now, no. But I do think Rudy Gobert is better than people give him credit for because he's kind of lame. Pretty recent discussion, but Joe Flacco. The answer to this is no. Joe Flacco is not a Hall of Fame quarterback. But again, and I find shit like this interesting. If you had asked somebody after 2012, after Super Bowl 47, when Flacco was fresh off of this legendary playoff run, you know, there might have been an opportunity where he said, hey, Flacco at that point in time, you know, he had just turned 28. He was smack dab in his physical prime. He just won a Super Bowl. In his first 5 years, people forget this, in Flacco's first 5 years, he won 9 playoff games. He had been to 3 conference championship games, probably should have been to 2 Super Bowls, probably should have made it in 2011 if not for Lee Evans and Billy Cundiff. Then he goes to the Super Bowl and wins it in 2012. So in a weird way, it was kind of like, hey, this guy, he was, in terms of quarterbacks 28, 27, and earlier, he's one of the most successful playoff quarterbacks in NFL history. And he also, a lot of his best seasons also happened before he won a Super Bowl. So he's become a joke now. Oh, elite, you know, Flacco's elite, it's an elite quarterback, But there was a time where he was actually seen as he was a legit, you know, kind of like an AFC version of Eli Manning, but he was a legitimate, not bad quarterback for the first 5 years of his career, and with the help of some defenses, got a lot of playoff wins. So he was actually on pace, I'd say, through 5 seasons to have a really, really solid Hall of Fame case, especially since he won a Super Bowl MVP. But then after he got that massive contract, it just completely fell through. Everything fell through. He had a good, 2014, he had a good year in 2014, but other than that, and this random ass great season he had this year when he won Comeback Player of the Year over Damar Hamlin, who literally died on the field. I don't know how you can come back from anything bigger than that, but anyway, yes. So the answer is no. The answer is no, Joe Flacco, but it seems like a cool guy, so he has that going for him at least. Logan Mankins, 7-time Pro Bowl, 6-time first team, second team All-Pro, and 2010's All-Decade Team Player. Logan Mankins is the unluckiest fucking guy of all time, and I'm going to tell you why, okay? So this guy is one of the greatest players in the history of the New England Patriots, and he has 0 rings. Now, if I had said that to you, you would say, oh, well, he must have played in like the 70s or 80s. No, this guy played smack dab in the middle of the Patriots run with Brady and Belichick, and he played there for 9 years, and he got 0 fucking rings. What are the odds of that happening? Literally, it's insane. Like, it's really, really just unbelievable. So I'm thinking about this, okay? The Patriots win their 3rd Super Bowl in February of 2005. Logan Mankins gets drafted in the 2005 draft on April 23rd, 2005. So basically, 2.5 months after the Patriots win their 3rd championship, Logan Mankins joins them. He plays there for 9 years, has all these accolades, has all these incredible things. He plays in 2 Super Bowls. He lost both the Super Bowls, undefeated season, all of that. On August 26, 2014, the Patriots trade Logan Mankins to Tampa Bay. And of course, as we all know, about 6 months later, the Patriots won their 4th Super Bowl ring. So this dude was a member of the Patriots for about over 100 months, right? 100 months, 110 months or so, smack dab in the middle of the Brady Belichick run, and he has no championships to show for it. That's insane. Oh, by the way, to answer the question, yes, I do think Logan Mankins is a Hall of Famer and one of the toughest bastards ever. But his timing is just, it's like the exact opposite of Robert Horry. He's the anti-Robert Horry. Patrick Mahomes, if he retired right now. Yes, people need to stop asking this, okay? Mahomes, I would argue Mahomes was a Hall of Famer even before he won his, I think Mahomes has been a Hall of Fame quarterback since 2021. So the last 2 seasons, he has 3 rings. He's a Hall of Famer. You could argue he's already the 3rd best quarterback of all time just off of postseason accolades. So yes, he is a Hall of Famer. First ballot. Derrick Rose. No, Derrick Rose is not a Hall of Famer. And it's not just, injuries obviously are the biggest reason why. I also do wonder how his game, had he not gotten injured, because he was never a great shooter, how would his game have adapted to the way the current NBA plays? We probably would have seen him end like Westbrook or something like that, where he would still be able to have some nice raw average stats, but his impact wouldn't be that great. I think he was really just at the right place at the right time in the right era in 2011 when he got that MVP, and the media was pissed off at LeBron and they needed somebody, and at the time he was like the humble hometown kid, the complete antithesis of LeBron, and he got it, and that's what his career has been compared against since. But no, he's not a Hall of Famer. He probably will be the first Hall of Famer in NBA history to not make the Hall of Fame, or maybe he will, who knows. Not really the sports you usually cover. But Conor McDavid, oh wow, a hockey sighting here. I mean, again, I don't cover hockey, I don't really follow hockey, although I do seem to just know random hockey players more than I probably should. I'm looking at Conor McDavid, and this is really the only way I know just how dominant he is. He's played now 9 seasons, and he has led the league in points 5 times. That's not including this year, where he leads the league in assists. He's led the league in assists 4 times. He led the league in goals once. He's won 3 Hart trophies, which is the MVP trophy, basically. The only thing lacking for him is Stanley Cup wins, but yeah, this guy, I know hockey fans, there's a lot of gatekeeping in hockey, but just looking at this, this guy, he's basically like LeBron or Mahomes of hockey. Like, he's just on pure talent alone, it seems like this guy has to be one of the 2 or 3 best players ever, along with guys like Gretzky and Lemieux. So I would say absolutely he is a Hall of Fame player. I think that's pretty easy. And finally, how about you, Barry? Has anyone cared to consider you for the Hall of Fame? I don't know. Am I handsome enough to make the Hall of Fame? You decide.